Simon Bridges.
Mr Speaker, what an outstanding budget by the Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance, Bill English, one that he should rightly be proud of. And I say that from two perspectives. From the perspective of looking back at the pitiful state that things were left in when we inherited office, the long way we've come back, the way we've climbed back to where we are today, and also because of the perspective of where this budget and the numbers show we are heading as a country, and that I know fills the people of Tauranga, of Hamilton, of many parts of New Zealand with an absolute confidence as to where this country is heading. And it's right to reflect on where we've come from. A decade of deficits was what we inherited from that lot over there, Mr Speaker. A decade of deficits, Mr Speaker. Actually, it's remarkable when you think about it. $1.6 billion in new spending. Well, look at this graph. Here we see Annette King, last year, $7 billion in new money. $7 billion, more than all of the new spending of this government. She managed to make it look so hard, Mr Speaker. She managed to make it look so hard that $7 billion in new spending, less results, fewer results for the people of New Zealand, whether in health and education. We are spending more, Mr Speaker, and we're spending it wisely. In health, $16.1 billion more than ever before in health. New money being invested incredibly wisely by Jonathan Coleman. Education, for the first time ever, above $11 billion in spending, Mr Speaker, and being spent really well. Being spent where we know it makes the difference, because we have taken the time, we have made the effort to make sure it is making the difference. Unlike Annette King, when she was in office and the billions kept accumulating, and the results got worse, Mr Speaker. We are investing more and we are seeing better results, Mr Speaker. And where are we heading? Well, we're heading to a position of rising surpluses, of falling debt, of growth of average 2.8% over the next 5 years, of falling unemployment. And Nanaia Mahuta has the cheek to come into this House and try and hit us where we're strong. Now, if you're going to hit someone, Muhammad Ali knew this, hit them where they're weak. She hit us on jobs. We are creating 170,000 new jobs over the next 5 years. Annette King said just about a minute ago, what does Treasury say? Well, that's what Treasury says. 170,000 new jobs through this budget. More jobs, higher incomes, averages of, I think, 63,000 per annum, and fundamentally more choices, which is what New Zealanders want. This budget, Mr Speaker, is a budget for a growing New Zealand. I'd say more than that, actually. Bill English is being too honest, too humble. A growing and a thriving New Zealand, Mr Speaker. And you contrast where we came from, yet again. Those adverts, I remember them well, a fresh-faced John Key at the Wellington Cake Tin. At the Wellington, well, I wouldn't say that about you, Annette King. You're on dangerous territory there, my friend. The Wellington Cake Tin, leaving every single year when Annette King was a senior minister in the last Labor government, and now Kiwis and Aussies are returning to this country in tens, and that was another one, tens and tens of thousands, Mr Speaker. They are voting with their feet, and they can't be wrong, Mr Speaker. They are seeing the confidence, they are understanding the numbers in this budget. They know that it's real and that it means real jobs, a better economy in New Zealand. Tauranga is a very real example of this, Mr Speaker, a city that I don't think's ever been as confident and that is booming on the back of kiwi fruit, where the government supported it and it's come back with a vengeance, construction, entrepreneurship, and this is a budget that is catering for that boom, Mr Speaker. More money in health. The DHP getting some $32 million more, taking it to $718 million invested every year in new generation medicines, in elective surgeries, in bowel screening. Well, see, Annette King's in because she doesn't like the speech. She knows how true it is. She knows it in the Hamiltons and the Taurongas and the Dunedins and the Canterburys and the Aucklands. They know that it's true. They're seeing it in the Gores, the metropolis of Gore, Mr. Speaker, where they've got great representation. They know there's more in health. They know, as we've seen in Tauranga, more in education infrastructure funding. A new school announced last week in the growing areas of the lakes and Pies Pa and all of that means more classrooms. Welcome Bay, Oropi, Monga Tapu, Mātua. I was there. Can I declare a conflict of interest? I've got a 4-year-old who'll probably go there. But a new classroom delivered literally last Thursday. I appreciate there's more that's required there over time, but actually in Tauranga, where we've got some of the highest population growth in New Zealand, we're not just catching up, we're, I think, getting ahead of the game and building for growth, whether it's in education, whether it's in health, and we've also seen it in the great investment package Stephen Joyce had there on innovation, with more trades training, more apprenticeships, more tertiary investments, really making a difference in the provincial areas of New Zealand, in the cities of New Zealand, and in rural New Zealand, Mr. Speaker. I just want to speak very briefly about my portfolios, Mr. Speaker, and the great difference that the budget is making in those portfolios. Because, Mr. Speaker, you look at transport, $358 million more invested in this budget in regional roading, in projects like Taranaki, plenty of bridges, Motu Bridge in Gisborne, that Annette King and her lot talked about, that we are investing in Taranaki, as I say, and in other parts of New Zealand. Kiwi Rail, Mr. Speaker, where Dennis O'Rourke came down to this House and says we're doing nothing in that area. $4 billion invested in rail by this government, $3.9 billion to be precise. Comparable to what we've invested in the roads of national significance, electrification, improvements, new rolling stock. And what we are seeing as a result of our investment, this government's investment, not that government's investment, is burgeoning metropolitan use, the numbers going through the roof, and actually freight on rail up year on year, because we are backing rail as well as the others. One of the things, of course, not appreciated is all of the things in transport outside of the budget, where through the Land Transport Fund we have seen, look, fourfold increase, in some parts of New Zealand, fivefold increase in the investment in transportation, from around $1 billion a year when Labor was first in government, the 2000s, the early 2000s, to $3.5 billion at the moment. Actually, nearly $4 billion when you include the Crown investment as well. Unprecedented investment that is making the difference, whether it's the Western Ring Route, whether it's the CRL, whether it's the East-West, whether it's the Wellington Corridor, the Christchurch roads of national significance. I also want to talk about homes, because, Mr. Speaker, Nunaya Mahuta came down here and said, I'm sure not willfully, but an untruth about this budget and what it does for homes. I'm really proud that this government, through this budget, will get to over 300,000 homes in this country insulated. How many did the last Labor government manage to get to? Look, I think about 50,000. For all of their compassion, for all of their talk, 50,000 insulated, 300,000 over by this government, and complementing the changes that Nick Smith is making to the Residential Tenancies Act, that will see an additional 180,000 rental homes in this country insulated to good standards. And I think we've got an incredibly proud record on that. We have made sure not just tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of New Zealanders, actually, when you consider that there's families living in there, possibly many more than that, who have warmer, drier, healthier homes, and this budget's helped with a further 20,000 that complements and incentivises that 180,000 under the Residential Tenancies Act that must be done by July 2019. And finally, Mr. Speaker, an access to justice. Some of you may not appreciate, because it's just quiet, diligent work I do behind the scenes. I don't expect any credit for it. But in Justice, as Associate Justice Minister, $110 million more for access to justice in this country. That is meaning we're getting the kind of justice system we deserve. In civil legal aid and criminal legal aid and family law, we are ensuring people get the advice and the advocacy they need, the most vulnerable New Zealanders, and here's yet another area we can be proud of this outstanding budget that is delivering in health and education, the economy, the brighter future we promised in 2008.